the 20 and the 10, and look at that, he hurdles his way into the...
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Shanalytics episode 33. It's Ben and Vinny, of course. We're doing it a little later this week, but honestly, Vinny, I got to say, doing this on a Friday is much better because we have a lot more information. We got a lot more stuff to talk about. And, man, as we've been seeing this past week on Twitter, anything can happen. So I'm here with my guy, Vinny, of course. Vinny, how you doing, man? Wait, first of all, you went to the Minnesota Vikings game, correct? We got to talk about that.
Yes, I was there.
But are you attending this week? The fans got to know, man. Are you going to be in Seattle for this game?
No, I unfortunately won't be. You know, I'm still like yourself, Ben. I am a college student, and there's a thing that we still have to do called finals, and finals kind of stink. So I'm going to be studying for those. I was thinking about it for a little bit, making the either drive or short flight from Spokane to Seattle for this game. But, I'm just going to watch it at home. So that'll be it. But, I mean, Sunday's game was so fun being there. It was obviously like I was telling my family after the game, like for a neutral site game, like for a neutral fans, not being a Vikings or 49er fan, that was a really good game to watch. And obviously there are some unfortunate things that happened in that game, which we'll get into in this in here soon. But I mean, it was just a good game, and a very important win and a very telling win for this team that needed to win this game. And the especially with these next few games after the Seattle game, they can really take a stronghold in a playoff spot, or do I dare say the division potentially? Who knows? But
I won't go that far with you, Vinny, because I'll just put this out there publicly. Yeah. I think I said it one other place, but I do have an Arizona Super Bowl ticket I took this week, and I'm feeling pretty good about that right now. But
yeah, I would too if I were you. I would just being pure optimism right now. But I mean, is it crazy?
8-1,
I don't think it's super crazy to say, but I don't think it'll happen. But
we'll see. We'll see. I certainly like the value on that. So we don't have to get into that though. With the Vikings game though, that was quite the football game to go to, like you were just saying. I guess let me ask you this, because I wrote an article this week on All 49ers Sports Illustrated all about the offense, and we'll get into our topics real quick, everyone. I know you see the title of this video. We'll get right into that in a minute, but I was kind of talking about the 49ers offense and how even though they've, how I want to say this, they've been in a rhythm these last 3 weeks, but I also feel like, especially outside of that Vikings game, that Rams and that Jaguars game, I mean, the 49ers controlled the game exactly how they want to. Game flow was going exactly how Kyle would want that sort of game to go. So to see their game flow disrupted a little bit against the Vikings. Now, honestly, I will say I feel like they had a hold on that game for most of it, at least after Jimmy's interception, after they got past that. I guess, did you ever feel like this game was a game that the Vikings potentially could have taken over, or do you feel like the 49ers kind of had that hold on them throughout the entire game?
There was a point definitely after the Jimmy interception, and then there was the drive where they had the not the hook and ladder, but the Thielen was open on the sideline, and they were just I forgot what the play is called, but it's they hand it off to the running back. He pretends to run, throws it back to the quarterback. And flea flicker. That's what it is. So they ran the flea flicker. Then they got that touchdown on, in particular, because it was on fourth down and they were able to convert that. I thought that was a little, concerning. And then their next drive, Thielen's wide open in the end zone as well. So I'm just oh, Kirk, and on the run of form that Kirk Cousins was on, you would think that it's going to be a Kirk Cousins efficiency day, and he's just going to go nuts, which he was doing. He was playing really well, but I think where it turned was, something that Kyle Shanahan has been criticized before, which has been his adjustments and his coaching, and he adjusted really, really well.
And I'll say this, Vinny, more than anything, I feel like the 49ers have been letting other teams beat themselves rather than early in the season. The 49ers were the team beating themselves, right? Costly penalties, costly turnovers. I remember after week 7, week 8, right? They're 3-5 or they're 3-4, 2-4 at that point. Everyone's like, you could point to every single game and name a different reason why they lost. And now it seems like it's kind of flipped, right? Where it's the 49ers are the ones sticking to their script. They're not flinching at what they want to do because Kyle knows what he wants to do going into a game, right? He's going to adjust, but he knows where he wants the game flow and the game plan to go. Now they're allowing teams to beat themselves. And I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but especially with the Seattle matchup, that seems like the kind of football the 49ers are going to be aiming to play for the rest of the year. And I think if they're going to try and go on a win streak here, that's the kind of football you have to play, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this was the game, the Vikings game was the one where you were really going to take seriously if they won. And this was going to be like the ultimate test for this
one
team.
way or the other, if they lost or won, the reaction
exactly.
Because
I think that Rams game was just I won't say it's an anomaly, but it's just that was just they were playing really well. And there was just stuff that wasn't going for the Rams way. And then you look at that Jags game, the Jaguars are just terrible. Yeah. So I'm sorry. There wasn't really much that
man, I was there. Urban Meyer, he should go right back to college. Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't take up that Florida
Dude,
job
it's
again.
funny, there were the rumors obviously about Urban potentially going back to college, and then the Jaguars are like, oh no, we see Urban as a long time, franchise guy for this organization. So I was just picturing Jaguars fans going crap, man. No, please just go back to college, please. So but then this Vikings team, that's just the game that you were looking at to see how serious we're going to take this team. And I think they showed that they're going to take this game seriously or this team seriously now, and that they're in a legit, playoff spot. Getting that win they'll always be above the Vikings if they have the same record.
Yeah, and same with the Eagles too, right? Because
exactly.
That's kind of the thing we're looking at here at the end of the season. A few things are really important. You want that head-to-head matchup because that's the number one tiebreaker for wild cards, right? But then you look beyond that, and the NFC record is the next best thing in terms of the wild card tiebreaker. So for the 49ers, they're racking up these NFC wins right now. That's super important. Yeah, you lost the season to a team like the Colts, right? But getting these wins here now, it's going to make all the difference in the world. And then, you do have the tiebreaker over a couple teams. The one team you're really probably not going to play that is going for that playoff spot right now is maybe Washington or Carolina, right? Those are the two other teams I could think of. But besides that, it really seems like Philly or Minnesota is going to be competing for one of those spots. So you own both tiebreakers over them.
Yeah,
that is great.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that too, everything that needed the 49ers to get better playoff, implications happened, right? New Orleans lost to Green Bay on Thursday.
New Orleans looks like a tire fire, man. It is. Yeah. Oh, it's
Ian Book is coming, baby. Ian Book.
I'm still holding out hope for Simeon, the GOAT, Trevor Simeon.
Exactly right. So the Saints lost, Panthers lost, Eagles lost, and then obviously the Vikings lost. So that all helped. And if they can get a win against Seattle this week, that's a split. If they lose to the Rams in week 18, that's still a split. And then even then,
they might own the tiebreaker over the Rams.
Yeah, exactly. That you never know. And I think the teams that you can't really go after or look for or go after are, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, because Green Bay has that tiebreaker on you. And you just want them
Arizona now as well.
And Arizona. Those are the three teams that you can't really chase after unless something catastrophic happens. And there's a spot for you to take advantage of that and potentially win the division, which I don't know if they'll do. If they do somehow win this division and they are, hosting a playoff game, Kyle Shanahan should be coach of the year. I just think, but I just don't know how realistic that's going to be. So,
well, and and we do need to get into our topics, but coming right off that, man, this week is going to be a tall task to try and to add to that, because although the 49ers, it's not quote unquote the toughest matchup in the world, everyone's looking at this beat down Seattle team, and we'll get into the Seattle matchup, but I mean, you saw yourself, the 49ers are going to be without Fred Warner and Deebo Samuel this game. It looks like it's probably going to be Fred Warner. He's doubtful. Deebo Samuel is already ruled out. So I want to ask you, Vinny, it was a groin pull, right? I'm not too worried about long-term for Deebo. Get him healthy, get him right, get him back.
Yeah.
Don't worry about anything else. But how can the 49ers overcome this loss of Deebo? Because he has been their entire offense. I mean, it's just going to be a tall task to try and replace this guy.
Yeah, what I think it does, I think it opens up opportunities for the other really good players on this team. And in particular, you look at George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk. I think you could see more volume from them and them getting the ball more now. With there is a little bit, as much as unfortunate as it is that Deebo's not out there on the field, Kyle Shanahan doesn't have that, worry of trying to force feed the ball to Deebo, which could be a good thing, but also could be a bad thing. So I think you could see a lot more of George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk. But I think, honestly, they can just keep running the ball with Elijah Mitchell and the running backs that they have. Because I think Kyle Shanahan said on KBR yesterday, this is the healthiest Elijah Mitchell's been all year. Yep. So I think that's the guy that you look at. You look at potentially 30-plus carries on Sunday. I know that's a lot for him. As many as they can give him, because you look at, the struggles that Seattle has with their run defense and their troubles with not sustaining drives as well. This plays perfectly into the path of how the 49ers have been playing these past few weeks. Running the ball, taking off a lot of time on the clock, and attacking them in the passing game with the play action. And I think that's something that you could really see in this game. Wide receiver 2, I want to see it be Jawan Jennings. I think he deserves that role. And I think that
let's take a second to give a shout out to our boy Jawan Jennings. We both love Jawan Jennings.
He's good. He's really, really good.
Go watch on YouTube the Tennessee highlights that he put up, and you'll understand the reason the 49ers drafted this guy Jawan Jennings.
He's one of the, real quick. He's one of those guys that, a lot of fans were maybe a little bit upset with because he didn't play, but he was kind of like a guy like Jaquiski Tartt, where you had to be patient with him and understand that, hey, this guy is going to be a very valuable piece to this team. And I think he showed that not just with his run blocking, but I mean, he caught a touchdown and he's getting targets in the red zone, which he should be getting because he is such a big frame and he does bully guys one-on-one. Yeah, he may not be the fastest guy or maybe – but I mean, for his size, he has some pretty decent athleticism, and he can really break some tackles and do some work with in yards after the catch, even with his limited speed. So,
yeah, and quite honestly, the 49ers don't have another guy like Jawan Jennings on their team right now, right?
They've never had him. They've never had a jump ball guy like that in a while.
Exactly, and with Jawan Jennings, right? I actually think when we're talking about overcoming the loss of Deebo Samuel, I'm not as worried about the passing game. In fact, I'll say this. I think with the passing game, George Kittle, he's not getting the ball right now. I don't think that's necessarily going to change either in this game. Like, I don't think we're going to leave this game and we're going to be like, oh my God, this is the George Kittle game. Because if I'm being honest, Vinny, and what I've watched lately from all the film that we've seen come out, especially this week, Kittle is open. He's there. There are passes to be had with him.
Yeah.
The throws just aren't getting made. He is open. There are plays that Kyle is designing for him. They just aren't going.
The first play of the Minnesota game.
Yep.
He tried to force it. Jimmy tried to force it to Deebo when Kittle was
wide
open.
The trick play that was designed that got all screwed up. It was designed for George Kittle. So it's not like the 49ers aren't designing plays for this guy.
It had to be a penalty for him not to go because Kittle was gone on that play if he didn't get held. So
yeah. So in terms of everyone imagining George Kittle finally having the game we've all been waiting for the season, it's not going to happen. So I just wouldn't expect it. The two guys I really want to try and lean on are Ayuk and Juszczyk. And the reason I want to talk about Brandon Ayuk is because they don't need to line him up in the backfield like they've been doing with Deebo Samuel. He doesn't need to play that role. What they need to do is create misdirection with him like they did last season, right? I remember so often last season when they didn't have any misdirection, where it was him, Kendrick Bourne, right? Maybe some Trent Taylor in there. Like they would run jet sweeps, fly sweeps. They would do bubble screens, tunnel screens. They would find every single creative way they could to get Brandon Ayuk the ball at or around the line of scrimmage. So if they don't do that Sunday, then I just don't understand what Kyle's doing, because they need that element of misdirection with playing Elijah Mitchell the way you have been. You need to create that conflict, right? We always talk about Kyle understanding defenses and trying to create conflict within them, and then you make defenders second guess, and they have such, they have just half a second where they need to make a decision, and guess what? One guy's running this way, one guy's running this way, and you don't know who has the ball. Get Brandon Ayuk that involved that way. We've seen Kyle do it last year. You can do it, and there's no excuse for him not to do it against Seattle. The other guy I did want to talk about, Kyle Juszczyk. I don't think they have another runner outside of Elijah Mitchell in the running back room that they trust right now. And I don't trust Jeff Wilson Jr. because he just doesn't have the burst and the speed that he used to have. He's clearly still coming back from this injury. He's not right. So what you're going to need to do is get Kyle Juszczyk involved. And whether it's out the backfield, running wheel routes, running just little crossers, lining him up as a tight end, splitting him out wide, giving him some handoffs. There are other ways to get players involved like that, especially with guys like Ayuk and Juice. We've seen it here and there with Juice this season. We've certainly he's had a game or two, some nice plays, but I think they need to get him involved more as a running back. Let him actually carry the ball so you can take some of that load off Elijah Mitchell, because otherwise I feel like this load is going to be monumental, or it's just going to be too much for Elijah Mitchell. I just don't want to put that all on him. So get a guy like Juszczyk involved. Give Jeff Wilson some carries if you have to. I'd prefer not to, but seems like you're going to have to. And then use the misdirection with that. You get smart with it. Do what you did last year, Kyle, because we know you can do it. So
yeah, and with that too, I think Hasty has a chance of coming back this week. So I think that's something that they could really use to their advantage as well. Use him, and because he scored a touchdown last year against Seattle, right, and he was the main guy. And it's unfortunate to see what happened to Trey Sermon with his ankle injury and having to be carted off. And you would have liked to have had him available for this week, because that could have been where you could have used him as well. But I mean, I think
would they use him anyways?
Who knows?
Still don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows at this point? But I mean, at least the thing though is that at least he's there that you could use.
Right. Well, we saw him against Jacksonville, right? When they did need that back, especially, they're willing to use him if they have to, but it seems like they'll use every exhaustive resource before they use Trace.
Yeah, and they used him against Green Bay, because I think they may have had to use him there as well. But I mean, yeah, I think in terms of the running game, you look at Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson. In terms of running with Juszczyk, I think most of it would just be like, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, just those fullback dives.
Hey, yeah,
it works.
Do a little misdirection, right? Everyone's expecting the toss with Elijah Mitchell. Have Juszczyk go the other way and just do the whoop.
Yeah.
There's ways to get around.
And you can use Ayuk in the running game as well. And you can use they've even used George Kittle in the running game on those tight end jet sweeps. So there's a lot of guys that you could use. Maybe this is
Jawan Jennings,
Jennings, exactly.
Because in college we saw the type of role he had, and imagine you need 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. You want to just give a little jet sweep, right? Catch the defense off their rhythm. Yeah. I think there's ways that you can get around not having Deebo Samuel this week, right?
Yeah,
it's just a matter of if Kyle's going to throw out the kitchen sink or not, because we know he has it in him, right? He just has to do it.
Yeah, and there's also guys like maybe even we see more touches from Trent Sherfield and using his speed to his advantage.
I think they'll certainly play him. Yeah, I think he's going to be in that receiver role.
And what about do they try and get a little crazy out there and give Travis Benjamin a touch on a sweep? Maybe. I don't know. Who knows?
But I'd rather give Trent Williams a sweep.
And the one name that we're not mentioning that I know some 49ers fans may be thinking they could use to solidify this run, or not re-implement, but adjust with Deebo's absence. I know right? People have been saying maybe this is the week.
Let's
maybe
not
this
even,
is
let's
maybe
not even
this
talk
is the
about
week.
this guy.
But I'm just gonna say, I'm not expecting much from Trey Lance this week. I'm just saying that. That's all I'll say.
Trey Lance is I wouldn't be surprised if he's out of the country for the rest of the season.
But I mean that's something that they could use though. Like Kyle Shanahan has his options. That's the point.
He could use him.
But I think that's the overarching point that we're both trying to make here. He has his options to weigh to.
Yeah. Well,
it won't be the same
it's
as
not
Deebo.
just one option, right? He has
it's multiple.
There's so many options. There's a war chest that Kyle can bring out. He just has to get creative with it, right? I think
against a team like Seattle, which I think before we talked about maybe this is a 50-50 game, but I think looking at Seattle now, this is a team that you expect this 49ers team to beat.
If they don't,
then yeah, exactly. Then that's a whole different story. But I mean, this is like where you can afford to not like force Deebo back for this game, and I think they would, they did a good job, obviously, of not trying to force him back into the game after the fourth quarter. Deebo even said it himself. He's like, I just didn't want to risk anything else. So I just didn't want to go back in. And that's a smart move. So there's different ways for them to, juice up this running game for sure.
Yeah. And they lost another player on Sunday, unfortunately, the leader of their defense, Fred Warner. Now, people don't seem as worked up about this loss, seemingly because, if anything, it's only going to be this week for Fred Warner. And I have to be honest, Fred Warner isn't on everyone's fantasy team, right? I think I'm not saying that the loss of Fred Warner is going understated right now, because I don't think that's the right word for it. But everyone seems to forget that the 49ers just aren't going to have Fred Warner this week, right? It's going to be Azeez Al-Shaair. We already saw that there's going to be no Dre Greenlaw, and it's going to be a lot of Demetrius Flanagan-Foles. So how much do you think they're going to miss Fred Warner this week? And let's say because he will be back likely against Cincinnati, is he like one of the top players that if they lost for a stretch of time, you would be the most worried about? And I guess let's talk about that. Where does he rank in terms of the players that 49ers lost him? You'd be like, damn, they just can't do anything about that.
I think he's a bigger loss this week than Deebo is. I just think there's more ways for you to be able to. I think there's more ways to be able to replace Deebo Samuel in terms of production on the field than what you're able to reproduce with Fred Warner out on the field. Because like you mentioned, Fred Warner's the Mike linebacker for this team. Azeez Al-Shaair hasn't played a lot of Mike. He's going to have to be forced to play Mike. And then you're looking at Flanagan-Foles and you're looking at Marcel Harris as those two guys.
Who's questionable, right? He's questionable.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where you're looking at more, 3 cornerback sets, a lot more K'Wan Williams this game, and maybe we see some other guys, right? Like maybe, we just talked about probably not going to see Trey Lance. Maybe we see Deommodore Lenoir back in this game.
Maybe. I will say I'm more interested in seeing the triple safeties, right?
Triple safety, exactly.
Hufunga and Jimmy Ward. And that's kind of what I was getting to earlier when I was talking about how much would the 49ers miss Fred Warner. It's not so much that I think Fred Warner is like, this isn't about Fred Warner's level of play. I just think the replacement for him with Al-Shaair is, for example, much easier than replacing, say, Nick Bosa, Jimmy Ward, even an Emmanuel Mosley. Like, I'm Fred Warner is better than some of those guys, right? But overall, I feel like in terms of the defense, having to replace one player on the defense and out of your best, this is the one I'm the least worried about, I want to say, because if you're missing Nick Bosa for a game, you just can't produce pressure. Like, it's just not going to happen, right? If you lose Emmanuel Mosley, things get really ugly really quick, right? Jimmy Ward, we saw what it looked like without Jimmy Ward on the 49ers. It was ugly for a couple of weeks there in terms of their pass coverage. But losing Fred Warner, everyone's been talking about his impact this season, the fact that they don't feel like he's living up to that contract or whatever, or his PFF grade is down. First of all, I don't love PFF grades for middle linebackers. That's a whole nother thing. But overall, do you feel like if there was one loss, right, that they had to sustain this game, this is the one where you can get away with not having Fred Warner.
Yeah. If you're looking at depth in terms of like who is behind those guys in the current state, then yes. But I just think, and I think it's kind of unfair to say like what they look like without Fred Warner because we haven't seen it yet.
That's true.
And we've seen what it looks like without Jimmy Ward, like you mentioned, without Nick Bosa for a year, which I think Nick Bosa and the production that he's had this year is more of a testament to Robert Saleh last year than like the players that were there. Meaning Nick Bosa there talks about maybe potentially like looking to, for whatever reason, trade him. You cannot trade Nick Bosa ever.
Well, because you can't produce pressure outside of Nick Bosa right now. Like you have
he's the guy
defensive line right now, and they're not playing anywhere near. Damn near close it. And the biggest reason people aren't talking about it is because of that guy, Nick Bosa, the guy who has 11 sacks and who's absolutely being a game record this year and who looks even better off his ACL injury. So, yeah,
exactly.
Let's get back to this. So, with them missing Fred Warner, they're certainly going to miss him, right? Against Seattle. Sure. But if there's a one-game stretch this season, not a one, I wouldn't pick this out of any, but with missing him this game, you can certainly survive this loss. I don't think this is something where this should be the reason you lose this game. I could understand you saying we can't produce our offense without Deebo Samuel because Deebo Samuel is so unique and there's just no one like him, right? I'm really interested to see the impact of losing Fred Warner because there have been so many people this season talking about Fred Warner isn't that guy he was before. He's not all pro Fred, right? He's just not the same level of play. So that's going to be put to the test this week.
I'm mainly just looking to see the adjustment of Azeez Al-Shaair and see, if he is going to be the Mike, like how well he plays that and because it's a quick turnaround to just play one position for pretty much your whole career. Then 1 week you have to go play like a whole new position with a lot more responsibility. That's like asking, say Lankett Tomlinson to play left tackle if Trent Williams were to go down, right? That's what they're essentially doing here rather than trying to like find someone because they have depth at where Azeez is and where Dre Greenlaw are because they kind of split that role in a way a little bit, but you don't have like Fred Warner's backup. And that used to be, Mark Njoka or whoever it was. Like he was a Mike linebacker that would, fill in for Fred Warner when he wouldn't be playing. Which we haven't seen a lot because he doesn't hardly miss snaps. So I think it's in that sense, it's kind of hard to say how he'll be missed because we haven't seen the 49ers play without him in for a full 60 minutes of football. But I think he'll obviously be missed. But like you mentioned, if they were to lose a guy like Mosley or Jimmy Ward or Nick Bosa, then that's where I think you see more susceptibility there, more so than because of how, and that's a testament to how good Azeez Al-Shaair's been playing recently too. So
he's been awesome this year, and he's gotten great compliments from Kyle too.
And like with Mosley, like if he were to go down as good as Josh Norman is at punching the ball out, which seems to be almost every single game, which is just unreal. You can't.
It would be Dolphins level last year if they lost Emmanuel Mosley.
You can't have that sustaining. You know what I mean? Like that can't sustain for like he's not going to punch a ball every game.
Right.
Right.
You could figure out how to get by without Fred Warner for like 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know if you could figure that out with Jimmy Ward or, I mean, like we saw Emmanuel Mosley too. But I want to talk about the guy who everyone's been talking about this week. He's just the king of EPA right now in efficiency. Third down efficiency.
Shout out Vish, by the way.
Shout out to Vish, man. He is the best. And
that was cold. Cold-blooded Vish was.
Man, I think we are all waiting for that day, and that was a pretty great day. Anyways, let's talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. There were rumors right before the game that everyone seemed to be pissed that Grant brought up, even though, someone in the front office leaked to Rappaport an hour before the game that they're definitely trading Jimmy in the offseason. So there's that report, of course. Ian Rappaport basically says that, Kyle Shanahan has left the door open for Jimmy Garoppolo to come back next year. Let me shut that door. And he very obviously, I mean, he had to talk to someone, and that someone obviously wasn't Kyle Shanahan. Then today, Peter King,
someone told it to him.
Someone told him that. Someone told him that, or he went to someone and they told him that, right? There's no way Ian Rappaport just goes on TV willy-nilly and says, "Oh, 49ers told me this back in May. Yeah, I'm going to go on TV and talk about this an hour before their game for no reason at all." Then today, Peter King is on Colin Cowherd. Peter King, obviously very connected in the media. He does know
the
John
49ers
Lynch.
in particular as well.
Yeah. He's buddy with John Lynch.
Yeah, was it the 2017 draft that he sat in on and like watched how the process? Like it was the 2017 one, right?
Yeah, I remember the video where he's following around John Lynch in his hotel room, even. So, yeah, Peter King goes on Colin Cowherd and essentially hints that, hey, don't be surprised if Jimmy is back. They need a backup. They need a quality, depth. Look at what happens when the 49ers don't have Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
So I let's approach it this way, Vinny. What do you buy and what aren't you buying right now? Because I think I'm buying all of it in the idea that I think there's a little bit of truth in everything we're hearing, but also I think what Peter King is probably saying is, hey, Jimmy, if you want to come back and be a $8 million backup for the 49ers, they'll be happy to have you back. Other than that, sayonara, because it would be physically outrageous to keep Jimmy Garoppolo on this team. Like just don't even there wouldn't be any cooking of the books. Just set the books on flames with gasoline and kerosene. Like, you just don't want to win if Jimmy Garoppolo is back as your quarterback next season. That's it. Like,
yeah,
no
so real quick,
how do you approach all this?
Yeah, I just want to say I really liked Jimmy's response to that answer too.
It was great, man.
It's so funny, and I know like Jimmy kind of gets like crapped on a little bit for like some of his like roundabout answers and stuff, but he was just like, he's just so funny. That was just so funny for him to be like, thanks for letting me know, man. I appreciate it. That was such a funny response. But to answer the question ticking at the bottom there, no, I don't think he'll be a 49er week one. I just think if you look at it, you could look at it obviously like with production on the field, and like we talked about it before, and Matt Mayoko brought it up at last year, right? Like he's making mistakes with the field still cut off at 25 yards, and he's still turning the ball over in that limited space that you have to work. And I think it was just funny. Like, I was at the game with my brother and like my other family members, and like Jimmy made that throw on the first series, and it was the throw that he converted to Jawan, I think, for the first down on their first series.
Oh, yeah, right.
And then, like, my brother jokingly was saying, like, because he's a pretty big Jimmy G fan. He likes him. He was just like, like sarcastically starting like the Jimmy sucks chant, like saying that sarcastically. And then the next two throws that he has was an overthrow and then a pick, the air mail, and then he threw a pick. It was just like, that's just the level of inconsistency that.
It's a Jimmy Garoppolo experience all wrapped up in one, right?
Yeah, and
I mean, how many? This was his worst game, like in a month, I think, in terms of overthrows and like just air mailing throw. Like it was awful. Like
it's high,
truly bad.
It's throws. Literally it's high. It's the same thing every time too. It's high and behind.
You see Ayuk like, oh my god, Jawan Jennings, oh my god, like
and I think that's the inconsistency there is why they made this trade in the first place.
Yeah,
and I think that's what. And I've talked about this before, just in football in general. Every player in the NFL, there's not a bad player in the NFL. It's just those who are more consistent and those that are less consistent. And Jimmy Garoppolo, he's not obviously he's not one of the worst players in the league. I'm not saying that.
No, like, but he's one of the most volatile NFL
like
players.
It's just so like up and down, and it's just that's what you look at when you're looking for what it does. So that's just like looking at it on the field, but off the field, in terms of finances for this team, it makes no sense to keep him on this roster next year. It really doesn't, because
it made no sense to keep him on this roster this year.
Yeah,
at that number, and they did it anyways.
because you look at Deebo. Deebo's getting paid. You have to pay Deebo.
Yeah.
You have to pay
Deebo
both of them.
and
You're
Bosa
looking
are
at
both going to
two.
be up. Yeah.
You looking at two guys that are probably looking at, Bosa is at least getting 20 a year, right?
Oh, I think he's getting like 30, man.
Yeah, 20, 30, right?
Like his
and then
brother
you look
got
at
29. He's getting 30.
and then you look at, Deebo, he's probably looking,
20,
20, right? And Jimmy's taking 27 of that. So that's something that you can really use to free up your money along with other moves. So I think it just logistically makes no sense to keep him on the team next year, especially with what you need to see from Trey Lance. Because I think this run of form is good from Shanahan this year, at least at this point of the season. And we can't leave on the note with say they go finish the season 10-7. And so that's obviously better than what they were at originally at one point in the year, but ultimately his job lies on the success of Trey Lance, and you need to see him play in order to make that evaluation to make those moves going forward. So it just logistically on the field, off the field, there's a reason why you made this trade. And that's not to say that I think their value now for him was a lot better than I think they would have potentially gotten at the start of the season before.
Yeah.
At this point, and who knows, that could drastically change in these last few games of the year. You never know. But I think if you were to ask me, I think it would be 75-25, maybe even more, that Garoppolo won't be on this team. Do I see a situation where he is? Potentially at the expense of a giant pay cut, which if you're Garoppolo's team, after everything that's been going on for the past 2 years, why would you want to take a pay cut? And for the 49ers, why wouldn't you just, and the 49ers side as well, what's the point of taking his pay cut when you could just save obviously more when you just cut them all together and you made this move? So if you were to ask me, I think I don't see Jimmy as a 49er week 1 of next year, but
of course
there is a slight possibility that
there's not a justifiable scenario to do it, but like we've learned with the 49ers, they don't need to justify all of what they do. There isn't logic or rhyme or reason or consistency to the decisions they make. So for them to bring back Jimmy Garoppolo, honestly, I'm starting to expect it from what we're hearing, not in the sense that Kyle's leaving the door open for Jimmy or anything like that. We know how Kyle feels about Jimmy. I think we're starting to learn right now is how this organization feels about having 2 quarterbacks, how important they think it is for QB depth. And even if Trey Lance is the starter, well, what if Trey Lance gets hurt? Man, I've heard 49ers fans say it so many times. So I'm just telling you right now, we are all thinking, and we all know, and if any of us were in charge of anything with this quarterback situation, it would be goodbye, Jimmy Garoppolo. Sayonara. Go have fun with the next team. That's not how the 49ers have been dealing with this, though.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to try and bring him back on a smaller, cheaper deal. They're going to say, hey, everyone, look, right? You saw what happened with Kyle when he didn't have his starting quarterback. We just want to guarantee that we can win games, right? That's the pitch, Vinny. And I do not agree with this. I think it is utterly ridiculous and stupid, but we know how beloved Jimmy is in that locker room. We know how much Jimmy likes to be here, seemingly, even though Kyle Shanahan hates him. It doesn't matter because the team supports him, right? So I just think that even though there's no logic or reason to why they would bring him back under those circumstances, considering everything we've seen from this team so far, I'm starting to expect that they're going to bring him back as a backup because that's just how things go for the 49ers.
Yeah, it's another thing too. It's Jimmy's in a way he's kind of responsible for this weird backup quarterback PTSD that the 49ers fan base and now I guess the franchise has. Right? It's every other team beside how many teams are worried about their backup? Like, and who care about their backup? Like, and who knows?
Okay, let's actually talk about that. The Steelers might be interested in who their backup quarterback is, but that's because they have Big Ben, right?
No, that's the point, though. Like,
that's the list.
The point is just like the problem. Like, if you have why do you care so much about a backup quarterback? It's you're not going to be as good as the starter, so the expectations should accordingly change. If you keep having like issues trying to find a good backup quarterback, your issue isn't with the backup. Your issue is with the starter. Right?
And that's kind of the thing I've gotten back to, Vinny, is that so many people are focused on Jimmy Garoppolo, but he doesn't matter in all of this. Like, it just doesn't matter because ultimately with what the 49ers did by going up for Trey Lance, by trading for what they did for him, if it doesn't work out with Trey Lance, it's just not going to work out. And 49ers fans need to get that through their head. And if the organization isn't fully bought in on him and they don't go full all in with him, then why the hell did they make that trade in the first place? And of course, there's no logic to why they made that trade when they did and all that. But
because and with Vinny, this backup,
we should expect anything from this team.
Yeah, and with the backup quarterback stuff, like people will say, you could say like you're not winning a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback. I'm sorry. If you're relying on that, like people will probably be like, "Oh, look at the
Jimmy Garoppolo can't win a Super Bowl."
Yeah, it's like look at people will be like, "Oh, well, look at the Patriots. Tom Brady did it." Okay, Tom Brady's the greatest football player ever.
No. There's no actual example of backups doing this. You can bring up the occasional Nick Foles.
And then you mentioned like Nick Foles. Yeah, okay, and that's my point too. Like, okay, Nick Foles. Name another backup quarterback that's won a Super Bowl. No one.
Crickets, right?
Because I guess the Tom Brady one, like that could be an example, right? No, but Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback ever. It's
an example. It doesn't mean it should be a example, right?
Yeah, like that's and I think that's the point, right? Like if you're focused, that was the one thing about like what Peter King was saying, like the thing that's ruined Kyle Shanahan like over his past 5 years. Yeah, it's like he said it's the quarterback and it's the quarterback depth.
Oh my god!
Like if you have an issue, that's my main point here with all this. If you're having an issue with your backup quarterback, that says more about the quarterback situation as a whole than your backup, right? And the Saints, and I think Pinor just was talking about the Saints, like, but I mean, like, look at what they're doing now, right? Jameis Winston tore his ACL. Then you have Trevor Siemian, who clearly isn't good. Then Taysom Hill plays last night, who brought maybe a different dimension, 4 picks. Then he breaks his finger. So now what are you left with? Trevor Siemian or Ian Book now. And I think that's where the Saints have been a little bit in trouble now. And that's where, like, I thought they wouldn't be a playoff team this year because they do have some really good players on that team. But
that defense is still excellent, right?
Yeah, and the defense is still really good. But ultimately, when you have, especially with Jameis being hurt, because I thought there was a chance they could have made the playoffs with Jameis, but
they would have. I'm sorry, for the Jameis Winston haters out there, man, look at what's happening with the Saints right now. They've fallen apart and haven't won a game.
And look at Washington right now too. Look at Washington heading into this year anyway, right? Like I think
who would you rather have, Taylor Heineke for $3 million or Jimmy for 27?
Well, Jimmy's a better player.
Yeah, but you'd love to have Taylor Heineke for $3 million. It's
exactly. And I think that's where like it would like transfer. That's where like it kind of gets a little tricky. And like Jimmy's value, like Pinor just exactly. I was just about to mention.
Let's talk about Jimmy's value a little bit because we can end this topic. We can end Jimmy overall on this because we've talked about his play a lot already. With his value, I will say this. I actually have no idea what Jimmy Garoppolo's value is.
No clue.
It mystifies me because let's talk about a few things, Vinny. If you want a Jimmy Garoppolo level quarterback, there will be Jimmy Garoppolo level quarterbacks available at a much cheaper price and guys who you can sign in free agency. You don't even have to trade draft picks for them. I'm talking about Teddy Bridgewater, Tyrod Taylor, guys like that. There's going to be multiple of them available in free agency this offseason. Then you look at the quarterbacks who do want to be traded or who could be traded: Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield. That's kind of the top of the list right now. I will say this. I think it only takes one team, and they have to be desperate, right? But if that unless that team just completely misunderstands value, there's no way the 49ers are fetching a first-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, first of all, let alone I don't think they have any chance at getting a second-round pick. Because if you look at it, you're giving up a draft pick to either pay Jimmy for a year, $27 million, and then he's a free agent, or you're gonna trade a pick to extend Jimmy Garoppolo instantly. I just don't see any team thinking the second-round pick is worth that, right? So I think, third is the max they get, but I think it does help that this isn't the biggest quarterback draft ever, but it's not like there's no options for teams, right, Vinny? I think for almost every single team who is losing a quarterback or who needs another quarterback, the incumbent quarterback that they have is going to another team, right? Or will be available for another team. People talk about this, about the Broncos, Teddy Bridgewater. He's going to go sign with another team if he's not there, right? I think even teams like the Saints, yeah, people bring them up, but Jameis Winston is on a super cheap deal. Why wouldn't they just draft a guy, if anything? They apparently tried to trade up for Mac Jones. So yeah, I don't think that's where their value is. The only types of teams I see is Steelers and the Browns, because those are teams who want to win right now, who could fit an offensive system around Jimmy, who have the right defense and running game to do so. And they need to win right now. They need to make the playoffs right now specifically. So I just don't know how many choices there realistically are right now.
Yeah, because I know Carolina's kind of been thrown in that conversation too, potentially, but they just
gave up a second, fourth, and a sixth for Sam Darnold.
Exactly. So and that brings a question. Does that can Jimmy, is that a trade that you think teams would be willing to give up for Jimmy? That maybe not. I don't. So
I think absolutely not, and I'll tell you why. It's because Sam Darnold, there was optimism with him. In the future, you're not paying him as much as you are paying Jimmy Garoppolo, right? There is a path to where things work out with Sam Darnold in the long term. Although I didn't agree with it. You could see the potential for something to work out for Sam Darnold, right? With Jimmy, what's the best you're getting out of him right now, Vinny? You're getting a great bridge quarterback. That's about it. So unless some team sees Jimmy Garoppolo as a franchise saver, I just don't think even though he's a better player than Sam Darnold, he's just not going to have that kind of value, because Sam Darnold, at least there's hope with him, right? With Jimmy, you know what you're getting. You know exactly what you're getting. With Sam Darnold, there's at least that hope of, we can turn this guy into something. Hey, look, he's with the Jets, all this stuff. No, you've seen the maximized version of Jimmy Garoppolo already. So I just think it's going to be a weird situation and a weird offseason for Jimmy Garoppolo specifically.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, and I want to get to this last topic. We're going to talk about Seattle, our favorite city in America. I'm kidding. For Seattle, Vinny, let's talk about some keys to victory. So I think one thing jumps out to me immediately, and I feel like this could determine the game one way or the other. Turnovers. I think the turnover battle could potentially determine this game, right? We've seen when Jimmy makes mistakes this season, he hasn't necessarily compounded them like he did in earlier seasons, right? There's been a few games where he's compounded mistake after mistake, even against the Vikings, right? He makes the mistake, they reel it back in, they don't let him make more mistakes. So to me, the biggest key to victory is limiting your turnovers, winning the turnover battle, and then finally trying to produce some turnovers. Because if you can produce turnovers on Seattle, you get to momentum, you get the right rhythm and momentum, I think you could bulldoze this team given the right opportunity, right? But if we're in a game where Russell Wilson throws a pick, let's say there's a fumble, kick return for the 49ers, muff punt, and Jimmy Garoppolo throws an interception, you're digging a hole for yourself. So if they can be mistake free, or at least net positive in terms of their mistakes compared to Seattle, this is a very winnable game, but it could also get out of hand really quick, right?
Yeah, I think you just look at keys to the win. I think it's just like what they've been doing these past few weeks, and it's just keeping the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands in that Seattle offense, because there are still really good players on that team, and Seattle always seems to, play against the 49ers really well. Like Seattle matches up better against the 49ers than the 49ers do against Seattle. But I mean, keeping the ball out of their hands again. I know we talk about the 49ers struggles at corner. The Seahawks at corner aren't much better.
49ers aren't even that bad at corner. I'm sorry.
No,
People give them
it's
way
not.
too much crap.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of given them a little bit of like more crap earlier in the season, and we've kind of accepted those expectations, and I think they've kind of exceeded the expectations that we've had too. So it's not to say that they don't have a cornerback problem still. They still need a number one corner, but I think
when you
Seattle,
consider how
looking
good
at
corners
Seattle's,
are in the league, right? Yeah, you look at corners like Seattle. Be grateful for Emmanuel Mosley and K'Wan Williams. That's all I'm saying.
And I know we talked earlier about George Kittle maybe not getting as much looks this game. That's something that you had mentioned, but I think you really gotta utilize Jamal Adams' deficiencies in covering and try to get any matchup you can with George Kittle and Jamal Adams, because I think George Kittle's winning that 8 times out of 10, maybe even 9 times out of 10. So I think that's where maybe you could see a Kittle game. But I just, and then defensively, I think it's just making him run the ball. I think you gotta, I know that kind of plays into the Pete Carroll's, like what Pete Carroll wants to do, but
they can't run the ball.
But like what Pete Carroll wants to do tends to be the reason why the Seahawks downfall happens. Right. So I think, they signed Adrian Peterson, which is, the last time he played Adrian Peterson,
49ers should go sign Frank Gore, right?
I think the last time they matched up against Adrian Peterson, he had like a really good game. He had like 157 yards and a touchdown or two when he was at Arizona. But you just gotta. Yeah, I think those are the keys. Just keep the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands and, make them run the ball as much as possible. And I know that's maybe a little scary to see in terms of play action for Russell Wilson. And it's really going to be, again, important for these edge guys to set the edge and not let Russell Wilson get out in space. So those are some of the things that I'm kind of looking for.
Yeah, and I think Pinor nailed it right here. He said Mosley, he didn't have a bad game against Dk Metcalf, so hopefully we can see that consistency against him in this game. I agree, but you also got to limit those moon balls to Tyler Lockett.
Was that last game he's talking about, right? I'm assuming.
I believe so. Game. Yeah. Because DK has been off all year. He's just not getting the same target.
Because the Seattle game in 2019, I know people thought he played really well, but like Mosley was a little exposed. But
yeah, he was. And I think with this matchup, this isn't a matchup you should underestimate, but I could also see the 49ers just absolutely blowing out the Seahawks.
Yeah, no, you can't take Seattle lightly. You can't, but you could see this game getting out of hand very quickly in the 49ers' favor. Yeah.
And I think that's certainly a big possibility. So you know what? Let's not beat around the bush anymore. Let's talk about our predictions for this game. For me, Vinny, I'm gonna say I believe the spread's 3.5. 49ers favor. I'm taking Seattle in the points, but I'm taking the 49ers to win in this game. Because I think what we've seen with Seattle, especially this season, is we know this with Russell Wilson, how they play. They're going to keep every game very close. This isn't going to ever get away from the 49ers. Where
every bounce goes to them too.
Exactly. They're one of the luckiest teams in NFL history. It's insane.
Yeah.
So my prediction, I'll give a score prediction. I guess 30-28 49ers. They hang on to the game. I say, they win on a 40-yard field goal. Don't give Russell Wilson enough time to come back. Waste out the clock at the end the right way. Hopefully they play it smart and run the damn ball, Kyle. You better do it.
I think 2 of their last 3 games they've scored, or I think in their last 3 games they've scored more than 30 points. So I think it will be 4-4. I'm going to go 31-27 49ers win.
Okay. So that's going to be it for us in terms of predictions and everything. I'm really excited for this game.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, any prop bet that I would take for this game, just a little gambling angle. I'm interested in those Ayuk prop bets. Hopefully there's a rushing and receiving prop bet in there for him. If not, hammer Jawan Jennings. That's who I'm really interested in for this game. So anything else you want to say on this matchup, Vinny, before we get out of here?
This is a huge game.
Yep.
I know this is not a team that you can take lightly in Seattle. Nope. This is where you can really, as a 49er fan, this is where you can end the Seahawks season for good. Yep. If it's not already done. That means they would have their first losing season in God knows however long. Maybe they, there's moves now that they make after this game, because it very much could be like that tipping point for Seattle in terms of their future. Like if they do lose this game to the 49ers, maybe there's a firing in the next week for them, potentially. And like, obviously that's from like the fan angle and having that greed and wanting to see your rivals, not do well, but I think this is going to be a fun game. One matchup I'm looking in particular at is the one that we kind of just mentioned, which is Emmanuel Mosley versus Dk Metcalf. I think that's the one that you look at where it could go in the 49ers way. You just got to level the storm with it. Yeah. I think DK's kind of been a pain in the 49ers these couple of years that he's been here, and you just hope that you can just sustain him and, limit those, deep balls to him and Tyler Lockett as well. But this should be a game the 49ers should win.
They should win, but
who knows?
So funny. I'm starting to get that feeling, Vinny, where I'm nervous, man. I am nervous because it's been 3 games in a row where it's like, oh, they're not going to win this game. Oh, wow, they won this game. Oh, they're going to win the next game easy. Oh, yeah. And then this Vikings game, right? It's been a weird stretch for this team. I mean, they've been playing very well, good football. Don't get me wrong, Vinny, but I don't know. I'm still a little cautious about crowning the 49ers quite yet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's going to do it for us today, everyone. We'll be back next week sometime. We're both dealing with finals, so be patient with us. Be on the lookout for Twitter. We'll put some stuff out there, letting y'all know when we'll be back. Hopefully it's a victory. And if it isn't, well, we'll certainly have a lot to talk about. So I appreciate everyone's time. If you haven't already, go and check out all of Vinny's stuff on my YouTube. In YouTube. If you're over on Twitter, go over to YouTube right now. Check out the video. Give it a like. Throw some comments in there. And check out all of Vinny's stuff in the description below. So that's going to do it for us, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out with us on Friday night. And good luck this weekend to the 49ers.
Peace out.